Hello, I'm Cassidy, and today I'm going to be talking about the book Some Places More Than Others by Renee Watson. So, Renee Watson is a primarily children's and young adult literature author. She has written a lot of middle grade books like this one, but she also writes a lot of YA books, and also she's written some picture books like Born on the Water down here. She has won the Newbery Honor Award and the Coretta Scott King Award with her book Piecing Me Together over here. So, Some Places More Than Others, which is what I'm going to be talking about today, is the story of Amara, who is a 12-year-old girl living in Oregon. She comes from a decently affluent family. Her mom owns a boutique, and her dad works for Nike designing shoes. She really wants to go to Harlem, which is where her dad grew up when he goes on a business trip. Her mom doesn't want her to go because she doesn't think it's safe. And she also doesn't think it's appropriate for her to go because her dad and her grandpa have not spoken to each other in 12 years since they had a big fight actually on the day Amara was born. But she does eventually convince her mom to let her go. And beforehand, she gets assigned a school project called the Suitcase Project, which is where she is given a suitcase and must fill it with items that represent her family history. And she actually uses this to like as an incentive to get her mom to let her go so that she can research in New York. Um, so Amara and her dad fly to New York for a week. And when she's there, she doesn't really have much interest in the typical tourist activities that most people want to see when they go to New York. She's really just interested in seeing the places from her dad's childhood. In the week that she's there, Amara is taken on various adventures by her grandpa, her dad, and her two cousins, Nina and Ava. Over the course of the book, she learns a lot about her family's history and the current dynamics in place. She gets exposed to the racial history of the city by her grandpa Earl, and she spends a lot of the book thinking about and kind of mulling over what these two histories mean and what they mean for her and where she fits into all of this and kind of thinking about her identity and all of that. She also plays a key role in helping to heal her dad and grandpa's relationship. Before she leaves, her mom actually tasks her with not only making sure that they get on speaking terms, but trying to heal her relationship. So she's given a lot of responsibility in that from the beginning of the book. The book ends with Amara and her dad fly back early because her mom has gone into labor with her younger sister. And she returns to Oregon almost with more questions than she left with, which I like because it's not, really tied up in a neat little bow. She doesn't come back having all the answers to the universe. She comes back understanding that her family history is something that's complex and can't just be answered simply. The mouse doesn't work. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the power chart. So this book really checks off a lot of the boxes in this chart that points to this book being really invested in child power. The first one is that Amara is a very comforting character. She does not get comforted a lot. She is the one that plays a big role in kind of dealing with the emotions of other people. And a scene that I picked out was towards the end of the book. Amara is interviewing her grandpa Earl, and they're just talking about like how he feels about the way he raised her dad, and he is talking about a lot of the regrets he has in that. And this is a quote from the book. She says, "I think of my next question, try to come up with something that will take the sadness out of Grandpa Earl's eyes. can we talk about what you're proud of? I say. And I think that speaks a lot to the smartness, that's not the right word, but the way that she's not just passively sitting there observing, oh, Grandpa Earl's sad. She's written with a lot more respect to her intelligence. Um, she sees that Grandpa Earl is sad about the regrets that he has. And so she turns around and says, oh, well, let's talk about something you're proud of. And I really like that. Amara is a very dignified character. She's given a lot of respect. She's not only written very respectively, but the other characters in the story really respect her. The adults really respect her. And she is really given a voice, and that voice is respected. She's not just seen by the other adults in her life as a child who doesn't know anything. You know, she's given a lot of responsibility, and a lot of importance is given to the ideas that she has. And the adults in the story really put a lot of energy into fostering that. She is a very complex character. She is not, like I said, she's not just passively observing the things that are happening in the story, but she is observing that. And then we get to follow along with her inner dialogue of how she takes that and what she does with it. There are certain parts in the story where she is patronized or not taken very seriously by other characters, but when that does happen, we sooner or later come to understand that they were wrong. So while she is patronized, she's not patronized by the author. She's patronized by the other characters who then get proven wrong. So yeah. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the patronizing versus productive chart. So a couple things that I picked out in this chart that point to this book. This book is very productive. It's not patronizing. So a couple things I picked out is that this book, Renee Watson was very respectful in the way that she constructed the child characters in this book. So the main three child characters are Amara, the main character, and then Nina and Ava, who are her cousins. I believe Amara is 12. I believe Ava is 14 and Nina is 16. And they are all constructed very respectfully. They are not, the author does not talk down to them or look down at them because they are children. And again, from time to time, they are patronized, but when that happens, it's understood, or that adult character who does that comes to understand that they were wrong. Likewise, the story is about the children are treated as people. They're not written as children. There's not focus given on these are children, therefore this is how they act. That's why they act like that, because they're children. They are written as people first and foremost who happen to be children. And so all of the characters in this story are interacting as people interacting with each other. You know, it's not the group of children interacting with the adults, and therefore the children act this way and the adults act this way. It's Amara interacting with her dad, Nina interacting with Amara's dad. You know, it's not the kids are going to act this way and the adults are going to act this way. It's not some binary thing, which is very unpatronizing of the author to write them like that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is that Amara is not fixed by the end of the story. You know, she's not some deviant kid who is being annoying and has this thing that needs to be solved by this benevolent adult. No, that's not what happens. In the beginning of the book, she is very annoying to her mom and dad because she is insistent that she wants to go to New York. And her mom very firmly says, no, Amara, you're not going to New York. Stop asking, stop arguing. And Amara refuses. She continues arguing until she gets her way. And then her getting her way turns into this very beneficial experience for her. And so, the mom was proven wrong. So that and other qualities about her are not like fixed by the end of the story. She does end up getting her way in most situations, and a lot of times is right about it. By the end of the story, she comes back to Oregon with a much better awareness of social issues like race and class. Like I mentioned, she comes from a pretty affluent family, her immediate family, her and her parents, but her cousins are not really like that. Her cousins are not as well off as Amara is. And there is a argument that occurs kind of towards the middle or the end of the book between Amara and her cousins because of that. And it makes her think about her class in ways that she hadn't before. And so that along with she's exposed to a lot of things she hadn't thought about before with like her race and her racial history. She comes back to Oregon with a much not better understanding, because like I said, she kind of comes back with more questions than she left with, but a better awareness of these things. She spends the book learning about the social influences that influence her life and how that has made her into who she is today. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is place. This is a very space and place-based book. Just looking at the book and like reading the summary, that space is a very important thing. Space is like the main plot point because Amara is, leaves Oregon and moves to New York. So obviously that's going to be an important thing. But the place is very integral to the story. She goes to New York, yes, but she's not going to New York just because she wants to see skyscrapers and she wants to see the Statue of Liberty. It's not that. She goes to New York because she wants to see the places that her dad grew up. She wants to see this random stoop in Harlem, not because it's something special or it's crazy beautiful, but because it was influential in her dad's childhood. The descriptions of New York are very detailed, which I found interesting. The author does not just assume that the reader knows, where this street is in relation to this thing. And I thought that was an interesting detail because Amara herself is an outsider. So I just thought that was very fitting. Amara, before she even left for New York, she talked about how she had always dreamed of cooking in her late grandma's kitchen. And I thought that was interesting because it kind of highlights the role of food in place, And when she does end up cooking in the kitchen, it's something that's focused on. It's not just like glossed over. It's given the importance that she thought it would have. So the last thing that I wanted to mention is this. If we're looking at not even just the story, but just kind of like how the book was put together, there are these two lists in the back of the book. This one says Renee's personal top 10 list. Well, they're both Renee's personal top 10 list, but this is top 10 lists, top 10 places to visit in Oregon and top 10 places to visit in New York City. And these are personal to the author. They have nothing to do with the story. And so a lot of these aren't like super touristy places. They're like very specific and they have some kind of importance to the author other than just everyone likes it, And I thought that was interesting because that's actually one of the reasons why I chose to read this book and potentially do it to my project for my project because, you know, just looking at the cover, just reading the summary, and then like looking at what did the author choose to put in to supplement the story, I could tell that this was going to be a very place-based book just because of stuff like this. It doesn't have a map, but I think that that's kind of like similar to if a author chose to put a map in. It tells that the book is going to be very place and space based before you even get into the story. So those are the big three things that I wanted to talk about. This book is very invested in child power, and we can see that through some points made from some points picked out from the power chart and from the patronizing versus productive chart. And it is also very, very place-based. So if we're talking about just like likes, I really like this book. Even just not from a literary standpoint, like it's just an enjoyable book. So from both a literary perspective and just if you want to read a enjoyable children's book, I would highly recommend Some Places More Than Others by Renée Watson.